one Tango Logic, over.
Oh, got it! Woohoo!
Roger, there's troubleshooting as soon as I get
You can talk, you can talk.
No, I took an auto track.
Oh, okay.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Wow, look at it fly!
Yeah, journalist Marik Von RennenKampff sat down with the lovely Dr. Sean Kirkpartick and got some really juicy stuff out of him, including possibly Sean himself being involved in blocking the Schumer rounds amendment, and a lot of other great stuff. The full interview hasn't been released yet. He's going to release that tomorrow, Marik. But he's released some clips online. So let's go through what he's got for us, because there's some really great stuff in here. Here Sean seems to be caught in an obvious lie.
Go fast actually was explained at the NASA panel. They did a really nice job of pulling that apart and demonstrating that that was parallax.
I've got a lot more, just briefly, quickly on Go Fast.
Okay.
NASA did not account for wind. That's a pretty major, that's a massive scientific error. And when you account for wind, you get a speed. If you're assuming the range is correct and this object was at 13,000 feet, you get a speed that's closer to 100 knots, 120 miles an hour. That's a pretty stunning error on NASA's part, I think.
Well, I haven't
planes don't fly in vacuums, right?
I haven't looked at NASA's analysis.
Okay, so he just uses NASA to debunk the Go Fast video, but then when he's pressed about it and Marik points out the flaws in NASA's research, Sean says, haven't seen it. Haven't seen it. Don't know what you're talking about. NASA? What's NASA? Don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I love it. Of course, just playing devil's advocate here. Maybe he's, using NASA's presentation to debunk Go Fast, but actually, he hasn't actually read the report. So maybe he's being technically correct in that he hasn't read it. Of course, if he hasn't read it, why hasn't he read it? I mean, if he were actually who he pretends to be, who the government pretends he is, a legitimate investigator trying to unravel the truth of the UFO phenomenon, then obviously he would have read it. But he's not. That's not what he is. That's not what his job is. His job is to debunk it. And that is clearly also what NASA's job is as well, very unfortunately. So you have one debunker referring to another debunker. Then when he's caught out, he says, what you talking about? What you talking about, Willis? I love it. I love it. Good on Marik for getting that out of him. That's awesome. So let's go over this one. Is this Go Fast as well? All right. And are they also talking about gimbal? Well, we're going to find out. We're going to find out.
Because a lot of that is glare that you're also getting off of the reflection. That's why it's so apparently hot. Because you have to now do the sun angles off of that.
This was at night, first of all.
Okay, it was at night. That's right. This is the gimbal.
This happened 10 minutes.
Sean doesn't even know what they're talking about, whether it's at night or day. What's going on? He's saying almost the sun glaring off of it. But the sun wasn't glaring off of it because it was at night.
It's after the Go Fast video, 100, 200, 300 nautical miles off the coast of Florida, and there's no balloon trajectory. We looked at every single possible. There's no plausible within the lines of sight, right? Within the AT FLIR lines of sight, that's the elevation and the azimuth. There's no plausible balloon trajectory within the lines of sight.
But you don't have range. So I don't understand what you mean there's no trajectory in line of sight, because there is one. It was recreated. There's a way to do that where you get.
Love to see that analysis, because I don't think even the likes of Mick West, who spent more time than anybody on this, has found a trajectory that finds this moving in the wind as a balloon 300 miles off the coast of Jacksonville.
Also, just have to add in here, we're talking about the gimbal. Well, there wasn't just one craft. There were multiple craft flying in a formation. Anyway, not a balloon, John.
Okay, well, I would have...
Well, let's move on. I've got a lot more, just briefly, quickly on Go Fast.
Okay.
NASA did not account for wind. That's a massive scientific error. And when you account for wind, you get a speed. If you're assuming the range is correct and this object was at 13,000 feet, you get a speed that's closer to 100 knots, 120 miles an hour. That's a pretty stunning error on NASA's part, I think.
Well, planes
don't fly in vacuums, right?
I haven't looked at NASA's analysis.
You have not looked at NASA's analysis. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. You haven't looked at NASA's analysis. NASA analyzed that? What? And okay, here we go. And Marik says, Dr. Kirkpatrick and I exchanged a few emails after we spoke. I asked why AARO appears to have grossly mischaracterized the first truly scientific study of UAP conducted by Battelle in the early 1950s in its historical review. And of course, Battelle also is an interesting company, also associated with UFO reverse engineering. But let's see. Sean did not give a response, shockingly. Yeah, and here that is from the historical report. But we also have this really, really juicy exchange here. Okay, check this out.
If this legislation were not reintroduced, I'd say, okay, great. They trust AARO. They bought it. It seems to me on its
talking about the Schumer-Rounds Amendment
face that there is a disconnect between what AARO put out. Is that a fair characterization, or right? Does that make sense?
Last year, when we convinced Congress last year not to go down that road because
if this
okay, what? Sean Kirkpatrick using the word we, I guess he and AARO, convinced Congress not to go down the Schumer-Rounds Amendment road. What? So AARO was involved in blocking or neutering the UAP amendment, the disclosure amendment? That's insane. Does that mean that AARO has some influence over the mics? That might be an indication or, suggest a possibility. But, we don't know exactly what he means by that. But obviously, if the Schumer-Rounds Amendment was blocked by the control group, and Sean Kirkpatrick is clearly part of the control group, that could be what he means. Either way, super juicy. America is asking him specifically, do you think that this new legislation is a rebuke of AARO? And that's where Sean goes, that they blocked AARO. Sean blocked the Schumer-Rounds Amendment. Yeah, man, that is juicy. I want to know all the details. I can't wait for the full interview. I hope there's some more, explanation about that, because that's all we get in this clip is right where it ends. That's such a cliffhanger. I hope that Sean goes into a little bit more detail about what he means by that, because that of everything else is possibly the juiciest piece in here. That Sean Kirkpatrick, AARO, had a hand in blocking the Schumer-Rounds Amendment last time around. Is AARO still involved in in blocking this legislation? Is Sean involved in that? Is his successor involved in that? The interim director, Tim Phillips? So we need more details. We need to know precisely what AARO is doing. We know they're a disinformation organization. They are Blue Book 2.0, or even worse than Blue Book 2.0. And even Blue Book left some room open for the idea that there were unexplained sightings. AARO says if we had enough sensor data, we could explain everything. So AARO is even worse than Blue Book. And not only that, but they seem to have a hand in actively covering this stuff up and suppressing legislation to push this forward. If what Sean says is on the level, and if we're reading him right, or I'm reading him right on this, I don't see how you could interpret what he said in a different way. But hey, maybe he goes on to explain that it's not that way. So we will see in the full interview exactly what he says, guys. But this is amazing. This is bombshell, juicy stuff. I had to bring it to you guys.